Hello, heathens, and welcome to Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your floral and quite voluptuous host, Megan Angus. And this week we will be discussing Ostara season, waxing moon in Cancer, lunar week 10. Hello, if you are new here, welcome. We here are the royal we. There's just me. I'm alone in my house yelling. Um on brand. We talk about all things witchy, pagan, and heathen here, but in particular, our great timekeeping devices, the stars, the planets, the moon and the sun, and our seasonal rhythms here on Earth, and how pagan and polytheistic religions, past and present, have honored and witnessed the turning of the wheel, which is the procession of the seasons as we move through the year, etc., etc. Let's get into it. Where are we right now? We are in Ostara season. If you want to know more about Ostara, if you're curious about that, I have a 2-hour video. Actually, I have a couple of 2-hour videos up on YouTube. They're for free. You can find them through my website or through my YouTube channel, Megan Angus. Kind of talking about everything Ostara, all of it, the astrology, the astronomy, folklore, ritual, spellcrafting, prayers, gods and goddesses that we can work with, etc., etc., etc. So lots of information there. But to get us caught up to speed, what are we doing here in Ostara season? We are working with energy like initiation, setting our intention as we move into the new energetic year, the new solar year that started at spring equinox. And we are shifting from dark to light. We are shifting from the work that we were doing during winter, which is Yule and Imbolc seasons, which is death, and ultimately resurrection here at spring. And so we're letting go of that work. We're still attending to some of it, right? We saw a lot of that in last week's podcast, where we're still attending to ancestors and we're still working with a lot of death energy in these first weeks of spring. But ultimately, as we move forward, I mean, and to me, really, that reflects the shifting part, right? It's not just like it's the next day, flip the switch. We're only dealing with life now. As it is with death, right? It comes when it comes. So even here in the beginning of spring, we are still attending to our ancestors, and those death deities and death energies that assist us in our work that we are doing in that portion of the wheel, and work that we're going to be doing, going forward as well. We're asking for their blessing. We're asking for their wisdom, their guidance, their protection as well. And we definitely see that in a lot of our holy days that we have this week. And when we look around the world at the global themes of festivals and holy days at this time of year, we see a real heavy emphasis on things like fertility, initiations, and rejoicing the return of life, or the return of the solar power, the solar deity, and the solar year, ultimately. All right, let's just get directly into it. Our lunar week starts April 8th, Friday, with a waxing half moon in Cancer at 19 degrees at 11:47 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, basically the next day for everybody else around the planet. And this moon is trining, I should say, Jupiter and Neptune by 4 degrees, and is sextiling the north node and trining the south node by 4 degrees as well. So they're not exact aspects, but they're close by. So what are we doing with this moon? Well, when we are at the waxing half moon, we are kind of at a branch or a fork in the road. We have hit a little moment of friction, and a decision might be falling in front of us in our work this week of some kind. It could be an internal decision. It could be an external decision. But really where this comes from is in the moon's progress through its, lunar piece that it's working through in this month. When we get to the waxing half, we are square to the moon. Or excuse me, we're square to the sun. The moon and sun are square to each other. So there is a bit of friction, right? If we think about what squares represent in astrology, squares are saying, hey, this situation needs some work. There's some friction here. We have to make a choice. Either we are going to push harder to make this thing happen, or we're going to fall back onto ourselves and kind of fold in the face of this challenge. So we sort of have to make a decision, like, are we doing the thing or are we not doing the thing? And that's a totally subjective decision. Sometimes it's the right time to do the thing. Sometimes it's the right time to sit it out for a round. So either way, that conversation or that question sort of comes to a head here at the waxing half moon. And the waxing half moon in Cancer, pretty tenderoni little moon. This moon can be super tenderoni. And we also have a lot of action in Pisces this week. So let's just get it out of the way. This lunar week might just be like a big old blubbery cry fest. And hell yes, bitch. I mean, whew, look at all of the horrible things we are doing to ourselves as a species. If you have not had a good cry over the state of the world in a minute, I highly recommend that you let this moon help you. And if you are thinking, absolutely not, that is a bottomless pit of despair, and I gracefully dance its edges daily. I will not be dallying in this whole introspective moment. I hear you. Let me say, I know. Let me say, you are doing a good job at dancing around it and not dealing with it, yes. But also, let me say this. This is a quote from Erich Fromm. One cannot be deeply responsive to the world without being saddened very often. And let me also say this. This is a quote from Kenji Miyazawa. We must embrace pain and burn it as fuel for our journey. So, yeah, it hurts. Yeah, it sucks. If you are having a hard time connecting to this, maybe watch some sappy TV shows or some sappy movies. Not the news, but something that can help you tap into that and have a good cry and have a good release. Respectfully, right? And as I always say, in whatever ways are safe for you, in whatever ways are healthy for you, this is a moment to engage our sorrow. We have been facing unprecedented stress for years, literal multiple years now. You need to hit the pressure button on the crock pot or it's going to explode. You know what I'm saying? I think you know what I'm saying. So allow this moon to help you get some of that stuff up and out. If it can be named and it can be looked at and examined, okay, cool. If all we can do is just have a good sob and then maybe eat some ice cream and go to bed early, okay, fine. That's good enough as far as I'm concerned. I support you and I love you in all of that work. We got this. I know it's tough. It also needs to be done. You know it too. It's kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off. It's going to hurt, but we've got to let the ook out to let the medicine in. Okay. When we are working with a waxing moon in Cancer, all expansive magic is supported. So any kind of magic that promotes abundance, fertility, protection, more of something, more of things. It's all it's all supported here with this moon. For our lunar body work, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action our breasts, our chests, our bellies, and our lungs. As I say every single week, I am a wild ass lady on the internet yelling about things and stuff occasionally. Not a doctor in any kind of health or medical sense. Please check in with your trusted health advisor if you are wanting to incorporate any of the lunar information in your health routine. For our plant body work, uh, here in a waxing half moon in Cancer, we are wanting to plant, transplant, or graft our annual flowers, fruit, and veggies that bear crops above ground, like corn, tomatoes, watermelon, zucchini, etc., etc. Okay, let us now get directly into the holy days of April 8th. From our Shinto and Japanese friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Hanamatsuri. This Japanese festival is celebrated annually. It's also called the Flower Festival, and it is dedicated or devoted to Buddha's birthday. Now, this is one of several different days that are marked throughout the year and across the planet as Buddha's birthday. There are different forms of Buddha, and even those forms have different birthdays depending on the region. So it's a thing. But on this day, special altars are erected in Buddhist temples in Japan. The temples are decorated with flowers, and a statue of a newborn Buddha is installed. So here we have flower imagery and babies, right? Newborns, very much in our Ostara season vibes. The Japanese pour ama-cha, a sweet tea prepared from a variety of hydrangea flowers, on the small Buddha statue. Very similar to the ablutions that Hindus use with the yoni lingam. The flowers are used for decoration on the altar. And this is also a symbol of the birthplace of the Buddha. And the pouring of the tea on the statue symbolizes bathing the newborn. Festive processions are held in big cities, and in some regions, people will carry like signs decorated with flowers, or statues, like little miniature statues with the Buddha child inside. And streets are decorated with white paper lanterns painted black with black and red characters. And I think that that's also very cool and interesting, because as we have already seen and will continue to see, a lot of our spring festivals in the Northern Hemisphere, like kind of all around the planet, in the Northern Hemisphere throughout Aries season, so specifically these first 4 weeks of spring slash Ostara, we see black, white, and red as a color combination that is emphasized over and over and over again. Big, big deal. Red especially, but with black and white accompanying it. So, pretty cool stuff. Also on this day from our pagan friends and ancestors, the day of mooncakes. And this is one of our holidays that we have from our modern Wheel of the Year calendars that can be found all over the internet. This is a fixed day in recognition of various lunar goddesses. And as we saw last week and the week before, the Romans were honoring Luna and Diana. We had a Greek holiday in there for Artemis, et cetera, et cetera. So, and further into the year, we will see other Asian lunar what am I trying to say? Lunar festivals, sorry, that specifically feature mooncakes as a traditional custom of making them, giving them as gifts, eating them while looking at the full moon rising. I love this stuff. Okay. From our global traditions, we have the International Day of the Roma. This is a modern global day of recognition for Roma, Romani, Sinti, and other traveling and nomadic folks around the world. Also on this day, we have from our Orthodox Catholic friends, Lazarus Saturday. This is a movable feast found before Palm Sunday, And it is linked with that. It celebrates the raising of Lazarus in Bethany. This week is also referred to as the Week of Palms or the Flowery Week, once again, right? And here on Lazarus Saturday in specific, hermits will come down from the mountains. Everybody wears green. There's lots of eggs and caviar. And as we dig into Lazarus Saturday traditions, we see lots and lots and lots of European pagan traditional Easter slash Ostara time festivals. And also on this day, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Dies Natalis for the temple of Castor and Pollux. Castor and Pollux are the twins that are connected to the constellation or the sign of Gemini. That's the name of those two twins, Castor and Pollux. One of them is human or mortal, and one of them is semi-divine and immortal. And they go on a wide variety of adventures, which we will talk about in the months to come. But why are we honoring them today? Why is the birthday of their temple being recognized on this day? Because, as we've already seen in last week's podcast and in the coming weeks, we are going to have several various festivals and rituals and celebrations opening or reopening the waterways around various civilizations. And this basically is a saying, or this is basically sort of reopening up um, the avenues for merchants, for trading, and for traveling. It's basically saying that the weather has gotten nice enough again that we can start to move around and go meet people and sell things, buy things, and trade stuff and travel from place to place. All things that come under the auspices of the planet Mercury, which of course is the ruling planet of the sign Gemini. All things that come under the auspices of the sign Gemini. Merchants, sea vessels, trade routes, all of that good stuff. We will, as I said, talk more about Gemini and the divine twins in the coming months as we move more into Beltane season. All right, let's move on to April 9th. All right, April 9th, Saturday. Our waxing moon enters Leo way, way, way up at 8:59 p.m. So basically almost, that's Pacific Standard Time, so it's almost the next day for everybody else around the planet. I really don't have much to say about this moon. If you go out this weekend, change up your style and your flair. This is a really great moon for trying, to get yourself to wear something that you've been saving or challenging yourself to try something that you've been hesitating on. Maybe it's wearing your hair a different way. Maybe there's a pair of shoes that you're like, oh, I'm going to save that for something special. This is it. This is it. This is the special. Fucking do it. That's really what's up with this Leo moon. We can do some work around questioning ourselves around how we dress in certain situations and why we dress in certain situations. But here's the thing. I feel like we have a lot of other heavy emotional and psychological work to do this week. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to get into all of that with this waxing moon in Leo. We're going to have a nice time. We're going to put on a cute outfit and we're going to put some glitter on our fucking face and we're going to be fantastic. How about that? Because I said so. So, so that's what we're doing with April 9th's moon in Leo. For our lunar body work. Yes, that's it. That's literally all I have to say about it. Pull some stuff out of your closet that you've been hesitating on. Put some outfits together that you're like, oh, I could never pull that off. This is the weekend. Please try. Please do it. Please, please do it. Goddess bless. We need some fabulousness in our lives, starting with ourselves. I don't care what gender you are. This applies to you. Okay. For our lunar body work with a waxing moon in Leo, we are activating, awakening, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action our back, our heart, our circulation, and our blood. Again, not a medical doctor, so whatever that means for you. And as I've said in other podcasts, but I haven't said this in a while, if working with that information in your physical body is not something that's appropriate for you, can you work with the metaphor? Right? In this, is there something on your back, metaphorically speaking, that you need to figure out how to sustain a little bit more, right? Is it time to shrug that thing off your back? Or maybe is it like, nope, this thing is not going anywhere. I've got to carry it. Is there a way I can make things nicer and healthier for myself as I metaphorically carry this thing on my back? Is my heart metaphorically under some strain and I need to give it some love this week? That certainly, again, sits with a lot of the work that we're doing this week. So that's what I'm saying. You don't have to do it strictly from the physical space. You can also, maybe we should say it that way too, you can also approach these words as metaphors for all of your bodies: your willpower body, your psychological body, your intellectual body, your emotional body, your spiritual body, your physical body, etc., etc., etc. Okay. With our waxing moon in Leo, for our plant body work, we are harvesting, doing pest control, disease control. We might be plowing or weeding. That's also aerating your house plants, and pruning your plants to encourage above ground growth. I have no astrology for April 9th to speak of, and I have no holy days to speak of for April 9th. So, hooray, we get a fucking day off. That's what I'm saying. Like, there isn't a single god that needs to be honored on this day. There isn't, like, nothing. Like, just burn a stick of incense to yourself, put on a cute outfit, open a bottle of wine that you've been saving for something, and enjoy yourself. Good job, everybody. All right, Sunday, April 10th. We still have our waxing moon hanging out in Leo, so we are still, using glitter medicinally or what have you. Okay, let's move directly on to the astrology of April 10th. There's a few things happening on this day. I'm just going to focus on one thing, and that is Mercury entering Taurus at 7:09 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So later in the day / the next day for everybody else around the planet. And I'm going to say, just as a quickie little tiny aside, well, I'll get to that. Okay. Mercury passes through Taurus at some point around this time of the year and these parts of the wheel because of how closely Mercury travels to the sun. So we are always going to have Mercury passing through Taurus somewhere during spring, more or less. This year, Mercury will be in Taurus from April 10th to April 30th, and then it will move into Gemini on Beltane, which is its home sign, and this year also is where it's going to retrograde, and it's going to retrograde back into Taurus. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll get into it then. Don't get crazy. Okay. So, what's cool about this is that this totally suits our wheel work because our minds and our conversations and our thinking are now focused on the work that we're doing in these two seasons, Ostara and Beltane, both here in spring. Mercury in Taurus is thinking about the body and the physical plane. Our communication styles maybe become a little more, I don't know, delicious or voluptuous, perhaps verdant, springy. Mercury equals thoughts, communications, ideas, and the modalities of communicating. And Taurus is ruled by Venus, who is currently in Pisces, where they are exalted. So Venus is very stoked right now. Mercury and Taurus, like that combination, wants to manifest and make physical the Venusian dreams of gay space luxury, pleasure, sensuality, and all things that delight the five senses. So you might find yourself daydreaming about the pleasures of the physical world or talking with friends about these pursuits. And remember, Mercury also rules travel, especially short trips. So, some delicious little getaways might be something that you can enjoy in some form while we are enjoying this transit. And also, this is actually a great time to talk with the people that you share love with: friends, lovers, family, community members, about how you can grow more beauty, more pleasure, and more satisfaction into your life right now. because, of course, Taurus wants results. So Mercury is not going to be satisfied just talking about what would make me happy. I want to do it too. All right. Other things happening on this day from our pagan and Celtic friends and ancestors. We have the sun dances, and these are big European old festivals dedicated to the coming back or the birthing or the return of the sun. And from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Dies Natalis of the Temple of the Great Idaean Mother, and that is, of course, Kybele. And this comes at the very, very end of the Megalesia, which has been taking place for weeks, which is the big festival dedicated to Kybele and her son consort Attis, who dies and is resurrected at this time of year. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Let's move on to April 11th. Okay, April 11th is Monday. I'm sorry, but you know it's going to happen every 7 days. There's nothing I can do about it. Our waxing moon is still in Leo. So, again, medicinal glitter or what have you. So let us move directly on to our holy days of April 11th. We have in the sky the heliacal rising of the fixed star Baton Katos. This star is found in the constellation the Whale or Cetus, also known as the sea monster. The traditional name Baton Katos or Kaitos comes from the Arabic Baton Kaitos, which means the belly of the sea monster. Now, Cetus represents the sea monster or the whale sent by Neptune to devour Andromeda. We find this constellation above Pisces. We talked a little bit about the Andromeda constellation last week as well. We're not going to get into it this week, but interesting stuff. Okay. Also happening on this day from April 11th to the 22nd, we have the Old Babylonian New Year's Festival. I really don't have a lot of information about this. I just know that it happened at this time of year, but this would be in alignment with the spring equinox. From our Hindu friends and ancestors, we have the holiday or the festival of Ramanavami. And this is the end of a 9-day festival that is dedicated to sort of opening up the light half of the year, starting at starting at the new moon after spring equinox. And each of the 9 days, a different god or goddess is honored. Also on this day, from our Catholic friends and ancestors, we have Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is a Christian movable feast that falls on the Sunday before Easter. This feast commemorates Jesus's entry into Jerusalem. And this also is the first day of Holy Week, which is the last week of Lent. So you will be able to go back to eating chocolate and coffee. And I'm sure you've not done it this entire time. You saintly folk, you. Okay. Also on this day, we have the Feast of St. Leo from our Catholic friends and ancestors. There's too much to say about St. Leo because there's 150 different St. Leos. So we're going to just move on to from our pagan friends and ancestors. And this is another holiday that we see in the modern Wheel of the Year calendars on the internet, Oster's Day or Esther's Day. Oster is a West Germanic spring goddess. I have a lot of information about Oster on my website. Check the Ostara link. By way of the Germanic month bearing her name, which is Ostermonat or Ostermonath, she is the namesake of the festival of Easter in some languages. Ostara and Oster seems therefore to have been the divinity of the radiant dawn, the upspringing light, a spectacle that brings joy and blessing, whose meaning could be easily adapted by the resurrection day of the Christian's God. As I said, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Bonfires were lit at Easter, and according to popular belief of long standing, the moment the sun rises on Easter morning, we would run out to give 3 joyful leaps, and also water drawn on Easter morning is holy and healing, etc., etc. So all of these things are ultimately being quoted by this author whose name I forgot to grab, sorry, check the wiki page, um, as basically saying, look at all of these things that we do at Easter. These all came from pagan rituals celebrating Oster, the goddess of dawn, the goddess of sunrise, the goddess of the upspringing light and the beginning of the solar year. Maidens clothed in white, who at Easter at the season of returning spring show themselves in clefts of the rock and on mountains, are suggestive of the ancient goddess, etc., etc. Um, for a long time, there was a meme traveling about on the internet that Easter got its name from the goddess Ishtar. Uh, that has mostly sort of been debunked. But, and we also know that when we thread back through time, a lot of these names do end up having to do with each other. So perhaps the more correct way to say it would be, at this time, the archaeological evidence and the linguistic evidence would show or points to or suggests that Ishtar probably is not the direct descent, right? Or the direct root to the word Easter, but perhaps is in the mix somewhere, right? Perhaps is in the recipe somewhere. But we do have a lot of linguistic evidence pointing to this Germanic goddess named Oster as being a representation of the dawn, east, the beginning of things, the opening day, the rising sun, and also the word sort of becoming incorporated in this stuff that's happening at this time of year. Okay. I think I've made myself clear. Oh, let's move on to April 12th. All right. April 12th, Tuesday, and our moon moves into the gibbous phase in Virgo at 8 degrees at 10:33 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day / the next day for everybody else around the planet. And this moon is opposed by Venus exactly, and is also trine Mercury by 3 degrees. So not an exact trine, but relatively close. Okay, so what have we got with a gibbous moon in Virgo? Well, cleanliness is next to uptightness. Okay. In the broom class that I taught with my friend Abby over at Broomcraft, which was a hell of a lot of fun. Thanks to everybody who showed up for that. That was really cool. But in that class, we took some time to talk about the differences between chaos and order, but also the differences between order and conformity. Okay. And this is important because a lot of the things that we have come to know about what order is supposed to look like in our life, these ideas have been inherited. These patterns have been inherited from other people or even from systems around us, right? Maybe even a job, right? We learned to mop a certain way or keep things a certain way, and we've just never questioned it. That's just the way it is. Period. Right? And so it's important to note in that cleanliness and order can be ways for us to impose our will on our environment. And that can be really cathartic if we feel like we don't have any other place in our life where we can like make things be exactly the way that we want them to be. But that's also a place where we can get a little dictatorial, right? If we don't watch ourselves on that, we can kind of flip into autopilot and be like, no, it goes like this. Why? Because I said so, because that's the way it's supposed to be done, and get really locked into, and like super wrapped up in the super tiny, tiny details of order and, rightness, and totally forget the larger picture of like, what am I trying to accomplish by cleaning my room ultimately, right? Is it just to like make me happy, and I'm getting all freaked out about like things have to be just so, like, have I lost the track a little bit here? So as we move through this moon in the midst of Ostara season, of course we are doing our spring cleaning. Of course we are. But we want to try to keep in mind the work and the play that we intend to engage in that space, right? Are we creating order and putting things where they go because that's where it's supposed to go? Or are we ordering our universe in the form that most supports the work we and our community are trying to do? Get the difference? Really important, because when we move definitively into Taurus season, it's going to be, we're not dreaming about it anymore. We're not envisioning it and summoning our courage and our bravery anymore. We are putting our hands in the dirt and we are beginning to build the thing. And so we want to eradicate as much of the old programming as we keep talking about, right? As much of the autopilot stuff as possible, and be very purposeful and mindful of any and of all the efforts that we're putting forward. Is this actually serving me? Or am I just doing what I've been told to do, of just following the pattern because that's what I was told was right? This is a really great moon to question yourself on that stuff and to look at it and think about it. Okay. For our lunar body, with this gibbous moon in Virgo, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action the large and small intestines, the spleens, which are a filter, and the pancreas, which produces enzymes that break stuff down and produces hormones for us. So again, the physical or the metaphysical, the metaphorical, what have you, whatever works. And for our plant body work, what do we say when the moon is in Virgo? Leave the plants alone. Don't touch them. Leave the plants alone. I said, don't touch them. We're too fussy. Leave your plants alone. But with a waxing moon, do some research on your plants. See if there's a fertilizer you could bring in or something else you could add to the soil to improve their, maybe they need a structure or a trellis of something, like that sort of thing. Do that kind of research. Very appropriate for the moon in Virgo. Okay. The other stuff that we want to talk about that's happening in the sky with this day, April 12th, is just a little thing. Jupiter and Neptune conjunct in Pisces at 23 degrees. Kind of a big deal. Last week, I think that I said that this is something that only happens every couple thousand years. I was totally wrong about that. I thought I knew what I was talking about. I didn't. This is something that happens about every 150-ish years. So we're not going to see this again in our lifetime unless, again, as I said before, the nanobots kick in. But I'm not betting on that. So this is probably our one shot of hanging out with this moment. Jupiter, Neptune conjunct in Pisces. Going to be kind of a big deal. So what are we doing with this? Okay, let's get into it. Now, both of these planets, I think it's important to note, really resonate with Pisces and the energy of Pisces. Jupiter is the ancient ruler of this sign. Neptune is the modern ruler of this sign. And again, this is kind of a once in a lifetime moment. And so on one of the positive aspects of this, I think, is that the highs of our life right now could be really, really high, which is a wonderful reprieve from the shadow work that we've been asked or demanded to do, not just over this last season of winter, but over the last few years of life on Earth. It's been pretty tough. So this moment could feel like a little bit of cotton candy, a little bit of silk, a little bit of sweetness from the universe that's like, hey, it's been kind of shitty for a while. Let's have some euphoria for a moment, right? And so this is a really powerful time for focusing on what you want and really getting dialed in on what's the dream? What's the fantasy? What if you could just, if the universe was holding a microphone to you right now and you could ask for exactly what you wanted, what would you ask for? Whatever we end up focusing on is going to expand. Jupiter is a planet that's all about expansion and making bigger, which is part of why our sadness work at the beginning of the week is so important, is so that we can get some of that out of us, right? It's not going to go away, but we can exorcise some of that energy a little bit. And so when we come to this, we can say, here's what's really making me sad, and here's the goodness and the sweetness that I want more of, the reprieve that I want from my sadness. Here's what I want more of in that regard. But, there's tough stuff too with this Jupiter and Neptune conjunction. The savior complex stuff can really get heavy duty emphasis here. Pisces is, boundless and very spiritual, but can dip into martyrdom stuff, can dip into victimhood stuff. And again, Jupiter wants to just blow it all up and expand it and make it much bigger. And so that kind of work may be coming up for you as well during this transit. We might see things like inflation spiking, in the world, but also for us personally, we might be really tempted with some unrealistic risks or tempted to gamble in certain situations or with resources that we just really shouldn't be taking risks with. There's a lot of opportunities for illusionary success or getting in over our heads because we have said yes to too big of a thing. Again, that expansion from Jupiter, and when in reality our system can't actually sustain that thing. We need to be watching out for our own misguided efforts as well. Right. So as much as I've said this a few different times because I'm old, I'm quoting an old person from the 1980s, but it's very much this, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Stay grounded in what you're doing, but also having this very spiritual, celestial vision. Ultimately, there's a real call for sobriety here. And sobriety, again, is a word that we can work with in a bunch of different ways. We can work with it in the physical world and meaning literally no drugs, no substances, stripping that stuff out of our systems. But it can also be the metaphor of sobriety, of approaching things in a sober attitude. And a part of that is, again, because there's a real opportunity with Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces to get washed away with things. Substance use can turn into substance abuse. And that's a relative thing per person. Zero judgments, just saying, what your limits are. And Jupiter, Neptune, Pisces can urge us to go past what our limits are, what we know we can handle. And really, again, seeking that euphoria, seeking that the too high, or the too low, that thing. But also because we are incredibly close to source during this transit. Our gods, our goddesses, the elementals, the ancestors, our spirit guides, if you work with angels, like whoever, whatever those entities, deities, energies are, they are exceptionally close to us right now. Our dreams might be really vivid and we might be remembering them a lot more than we usually do during this transit. And we want to be as sober and connected as possible, right? We want to be as present for those interactions as we possibly can be. Now, in no way am I eschewing the religious and spiritual traditions that work with entheogens or God-inducing plants. And also there's something here about that stuff being so close that we might not need to work with those helpers. And instead, it may really behoove us to be as clear and salient as possible in our interactions with these energies and these entities. Okay. And so what else can happen with this transit? We might be urged to sort of recreate our religions and our philosophies. We want to be really clear about what we're doing and what we're investing our energy and time and resources in. We might be seeing things right now that are not going to literally manifest for a very long time. So this might again be really about getting clear on the dream, getting clear on the fantasy, petitioning our deities and our ancestors and saying very clearly, this is exactly what I want, being very grateful for, how close they do come and the information and the wisdom that they do give us during this time period. And then just kind of sit on it like an egg, in fact, right? Just sit on it and wait for the time to be right later. Soon, Jupiter is going to head into Aries, and then it's going to backtrack into Pisces again, and then it's going to head into Aries again, right? So we're not quite done with this work, but when it does that retrograde and direct dance, it's not going to intersect with Neptune again. So the energy is not going to be potent the next time around, or as potent, I should say. So let me leave you with this Jupiter-Neptune transit. Let me leave you with this. One, the sun is sextiling Saturn in Aquarius this entire time, and particularly on this day. So there is a deep question around how do your beliefs affect your community and where do they sit, right? How does the vision, the fantasy intersect with the needs of your people, the needs of your family and your friends, your community at large, that stuff. But also this, our ability to reimagine our lives is a sacred gift, and we have to utilize it. The world is saved over and over by the power of our imaginations. And so it is our job to save ourselves through the power of reimagining our lives. As I always say on the podcast, we are not going to ignore context. I don't think I'm going to reimagine away racism or fascism, okay? But on the individual level, what can I do to reimagine or re-envision where I am in my life and what those things could mean for me? Just that stuff. That's all. Just little things. Barely, hardly anything this week, right? It's just a little bit of this and that. That's it. Okay, I think that's enough of the lunar and the astro. Let us get into the holy days of April 12th. Yeah, we still have more to talk about for April 12th. I told you there was a lot. Chonies should be hiked. Okay, I lied. Actually, one more tiny thing. I have a podcast that I recorded back in February for my patrons up on Patreon. That is an hour and 47 minutes about Jupiter's transit through Pisces and really Jupiter's transits and major aspects and movements and whatnot throughout this entire year, including a guide for Jupiter moving through the houses of the natal chart. So sign up to my Patreon and you can listen to that. Okay, now let's go on to the holy days. All right. April 12th, holy days. We actually only have two. Starting with stuff going on in the sky, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Akamar. This is a star in the constellation the River, or Eridanus. In classical times, this star was the most southerly bright star in the River Eridanus constellation that could be seen from the latitude of Greece. So it marked the south end of the river, quote unquote, constellation. And then as people, of that era and time moved around and traveled, they realized that the constellation actually extended further south, and there is now a different star that marks the actual end of the river of the constellation. But what I think is interesting about this, Eridanus represents the river Padus or Po, into which Phaeton fell when slain by Jupiter for having set the world on fire by misguiding the chariot of his father Phobos, or the sun. Um, uh, so there's solar action here, right? And solar energy on the rise and solar heat growing in intensity in that myth. We have a Jupiter holiday this week as well, so that's interesting. But then also that river thing, knowing that we also have a holiday dedicated this week to Castor and Pollux and their connection with waterways in terms of travel and merchant work and trading and things like that. So interesting connections there. Also, on this day, from April 12th to April 19th this year, we have the Ludi Cereri from our Roman friends and ancestors. This is the week of games dedicated to the goddess Ceres. Ceres, of course, was the Roman goddess of agriculture, grain crops, fertility, and motherly relationships. Her Greek cognate is Demeter. Ceres' daughter is Proserpina. Demeter's daughter is Persephone. They both go through the same underworld journey and come back. Her 7-day April festival of Cerealia includes the popular Ludi Cerealis. She was also honored in May. But truly, there are a huge series of festivals dedicated to Ceres that run throughout the year, and all of them are dedicated to the various portions of the cycles of fertility of the land and crops and the growing of crops, and the restoration of soil, and on and on. So we will talk about Ceres throughout the year. She is credited with the discovery of spelt wheat, the yoking of oxen and plowing, the sowing, protection, and nourishing of the young seed, and the gift of agriculture to humankind. She had the power to fertilize, multiply, and fructify plant and animal seed, and her laws and rights protected all activities of the agricultural cycle. As Ceres' first plow furrow opened the earth, or Tellus' realm, whom we also have a holiday to this week, Tellus Mater, to the world of men, and created the first field and its boundary, her laws determined the course of settled, lawful, civilized life. Ceres' signs and iconography, like Demeter's from early Mycenae onwards, include poppies, symbolic of fertility, sleep, death, and rebirth. Poppies are often woven into Ceres' wheat stalk crown, the corona spicaea, worn by her priestesses and devotees. So this week would absolutely be an appropriate time to have wheat and poppies on your altar for just a moment, if only, to acknowledge this portion of the growth cycle that we are going to be working with all year long. And with that, let us move to April 13th. But before that, how about an ad? Okay. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you a bajillion billion times. See, the sirens are going off even as I say it. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys don't even know. You don't even know. Thank you so much. You can sub for as little as $1 if you just think this podcast is dope and you want to support it. I don't run ads on the podcast, partly because I don't want to, and partly because I won't get paid even if I do. So screw them, man. You can sub, as I said, for as little as $1 or $5, even if you want to just support the podcast. And this is plenty of information. But if you want even more information, extra podcasts, extra videos, extra information about the Wheel of the Year, magical practices, tarot, etc., subbing at the higher levels, you get all kinds of cool free stuff. And at the even higher levels, you get free readings every month with me, to be able to integrate all of this information into your personal life based on what's going on in your natal chart and all of that other good stuff. Join and change your life forever. Or, whatever. Thanks so much for the support. If you can't support financially, I completely understand, because life sucks on Earth right now. It's too expensive for everything. Tell a friend, share it on social media. Give it a thumbs up. If you're feeling especially hedonistic, you can leave a rating or a review. All right, that's the end of the ad. Let's get back to the podcast. Okay, April 13th, Wednesday. We still have our waxing moon hanging out in Virgo. Continue to leave your plants alone and go scrub something with a toothbrush. And we have no astrology of note for this day. So let us scooch directly on to the holy days of April 13th. From our Southeast Asian friends and ancestors, from April 13th through 16th, approximately, we have a whole huge series of water festivals. So here again, we have an emphasis on water symbolism. We have our river constellation, fixed star. We have Castor and Pollux, etc., etc. So interesting emphasis on this. But again, we know that this is because as the weather changes, waterways, which equal transportation and trade, are beginning to open back up again. So big deal. From April 13th to 14th, from our Sikh friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Baisakhi. This is the Northern Indian Punjabi New Year, celebrated along with a lot of other New Years in India and Southeast Asia, and yeah. Also from our Sikh friends and ancestors on this day, we have Dastar Divas, and this is the day of honoring their turbans that they wear. There's way more to it than that, but that is ultimately what is happening on this day. From our UK friends and ancestors, we have Egg Rolling Day, and it is exactly what it sounds like it is. There's a tradition of rolling eggs down a hill and sometimes eating them. This ties in with all of our Easter symbolism that we're working with, Ostara symbolism, spring symbolism. This is energy building as it's rolling down this green grass hill, and the idea of the sun being a symbol within the egg and all of this good stuff. From our Japanese friends and ancestors, we have Kamotama Yorihime. This is the sacred fertility marriage of the god Oyama, Kui no Kami, and the goddess Kamotama Yorihime, resulting in the birth of the child Kami. And as we have also seen here in Ostara season, we do begin to see the big long string of holy sacred marriages that happen between various gods and goddesses or elements in the world, or natural spirits or what have you. That starts to kick off here in Ostara season. A lot of the deities that we see go through holy marriages at this time, or divine or sacred marriages, it's a lot more symbolic than it is erotic. A lot of times it's children or childlike or ageless deities. And it's like the symbol of the union, or the symbol of these energies being brought together to get something done. And then as we move into Beltane season, it becomes much more vulgar. It becomes much more erotic, much more sensual, much more about the physical plane, much more about sex between consenting humans, or sensual contact between consenting humans. But at this time, we're seeing lots of sacred marriages that are very like holy and spiritual and energetic and symbolic in their nature. Also on this day, April 13th, last holy day, we have the Dies Natalis of the temple to Jupiter Victor and the temple to Jove the Liberator from our Roman friends and ancestors. As I mentioned before, this is our holy day to Jupiter. And so in working with Jupiter as a deity form, you will find that the Romans had over 100 different names for Jupiter. There's Jupiter Invictus, there's Jupiter everything Jupiter, Jupiter Soteria, on and on. And so this is Jupiter Victor, Jupiter the Victorious. Again, it's kind of speaking to this rising energy, this surging solar energy that's coming up in the world, this virile energy that's coming up out of the ground, all of that good stuff. Okay. Let's move on to April 14th. don't know where that sigh came from. That was really epic. All right, April 14th. This is a Thursday. Our waxing moon enters Libra. And this is ultimately where we are going to have our full moon next week. Um, this is the pre-funk. We have officially entered the pre-funk for the full moon. And I feel like, this is a really great moon for kind of just letting those Virgo vibes melt a little bit into a more kind of easygoing, harmonious, chill. Like really witnessing the balance of light and dark, really witnessing the balance of day and night as like we're slowly shifting into having our longer days and shorter nights. And in whatever way is safe and healthy for you, because of course we are having another COVID spike, um, be with loved ones. If you've got a person or people that you get frisky with, go get frisky. Um, or maybe babysit for somebody so they can go get frisky. Like this is definitely, coming at the end of a week of doing a lot of emotional work, a lot of spiritual work, and then also, the physical world intensity and work that we're doing continuously, right? Regardless of what the astrology is, right? There's a great weight or burden to carry every day for all of us here on the physical plane right now. And so if there is any way for you to like get loose, hang out, have a nice time, get sexy, get frisky, get sensual with yourself, yes, but with other people, lovely. Or if you can help somebody go do that, watching their kid, walk their dog, whatever needs to happen, that kind of a thing, very, very appropriate for this moon. For our lunar body work with this waxing moon in Libra as we lead up to the full moon. We are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action. Our hips, our kidney, which is even more filtration and sending of good stuff back to the system or back to our bodies, and then our bladder as well. And again, if the working with the physical is not real for you, work with the metaphor however works for you, because it works either way. And for our plant body work, it's kind of the same as Virgo. We don't want to do anything too intense with the plants, but because it is Libra ruled by Venus, I always recommend, going in for the aesthetics. This might be a really good day to gently wipe off and dust the leaves of your plants. Or check out the lighting around your plants or the decorations, or maybe wipe down their pots or their containers. If you are lucky enough to have an outdoor area, your windowsill or whatever, maybe it needs to get swept off or dusted or whatever. So that kind of work is very perfect, very appropriate for our waxing moon in Libra. Okay, that's our lunar stuff that we're doing. So now let's talk about the astrology of this day. And what I want to talk about specifically is Mars enters Pisces. So we don't get Mars traveling through Pisces every Ostara season. Mars kind of does its own thing. It's the first inner planet that is independent of the sun's movement. And so, Mars goes wherever it wants to go, man. You can't tell Mars what the fuck to do, man. So sometimes Mars is in or near Pisces during Ostara season, and sometimes it's not, but we have it there this year. And so this can look like a few things, especially on the personal level. But for our wheel work, it's bringing in a really watery, spiritual, empathetic energy during a time when we are usually focused on reigniting our personal spark for spring. So, Mars is traveling through Pisces from April 14th to May 25th. And when we think about Mars, the words for me that come to mind are things like action, drive, passion, aggression, force. And when I think about Pisces, I'm thinking about words like dreams, spirituality, martyrs, boundlessness, stuff like that. Mars is super direct, and Pisces can be very indirect in its moves. So in my opinion, I think sometimes Mars can have a hard time here, and then sometimes you can have a really cool combination with the fiery Mars and the watery Pisces energy. Okay, so let's talk about. First, I'm going to list off the types of things that I think could be really hard, the types of ways that Mars in Pisces could manifest, and it could be super funky. So, stuff like this: nebulous action, right? Action that's just like, what are you doing? I don't understand any of this. Why are we doing this? What is this for? Chaotic aggression. I see that you're really mad. I don't know why. Or I'm, like, what is it? Free floating anger, right? Like that sort of thing. Like I'm really fussy and I don't know why. That sort of stuff. Deception and impatience. And those two bodies working together in a form of like, just hurry up and sign the contract. Oh, I haven't read everything. There's no time. You just got to commit. There's no time. That sort of stuff. Unchecked victim energy. You might be the giver, you might be the receiver. Are you playing the victim somewhere? Are you dealing with somebody who is playing the victim somewhere? And I know that's harsh. I'm not accusing anybody right now. But time is short and I speak directly sometimes. And, and this is one of those moments. I have Mars in the first house. I tend to be abrupt about things. But anyways, unchecked victim energy can be an intense element here with Mars in Pisces. Hypersensitive anger, right? Anger that seems to take nothing and somebody is at a boiling point. That type of stuff. Escapist sexuality. Now, I know I just encouraged everybody to go on a date and go get frisky, but this is different. This is, engaging in sex or sensual contact with yourself or other people as a means of avoiding dealing with other things, as a means of numbing yourself in the way that we would use any other substance, using sexual energy as a substance to escape things. I think that can be done in a really healthy way, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but I'm talking about it in the not healthy way. Lack of faith in self leading to competitiveness or even aggressive actions. So that, like, lack of faith, feeling insecure, feeling unstable, feeling weak, feeling less than, leading to lashing out, getting super defensive, and so then going on the offensive and, creating friction and aggression and chaos, perhaps when there wasn't any in that situation. Okay. So that's the really fun ways that Mars can handle it while it's moving through Pisces. But here are some other ideas for you to work with as Mars moves through Pisces. And these are some things that I really want you to explore, obviously. How can we work with Mars and Pisces in amazing ways? Unifying action. Actions that help us see through the false boundaries that keep people apart. Being brave and challenging those false narratives that society hands us that says you're different from these people because of XYZ. When in fact, yes, we may have some differences, but we probably have a lot more similarities. Or our similarities might be really, really important, even if they are few. Unifying action. Boundless courage that really can see the end of the situation and can see why it needs to be brave. Visionary, pioneering energy and humble accomplishments. In other words, building or working on or putting resources and time and energy and efforts towards building what the people need for a better world. that stuff. Pisces is extremely humanitarian. It's extremely altruistic. And to put that sort of hero revolutionary energy that Aries or Mars can summon together with that can be a really beautiful thing. Healing sex and healing passion. So here's where I'm talking about where we can escape or transcend, really, is another way of thinking about it. The mundane world, the sorrows of this world, the pain of this moment into a blissful, ecstatic state with ourselves, with other people, and purposefully utilizing sex and sensuality as a place um, where we can have a reprieve, right? Where we can have a high that's a little too high, right? That's, kind of like, woo, that sort of a moment, but also really like releasing in that place and letting ourselves go in that place and letting ourselves be opened and healed and restored in that place. It's a very tender thing. It's a tender thing to talk about. And it's a really powerful experience. And anybody can provide this for themselves. Very important to remember that. And we can also provide that for other people, and other people can potentially provide that for us too. But we, first and foremost, can always provide that for ourselves. And idealistic directness. Again, Mars wants to act, and it wants to act right now. And Pisces wants to be, again, very visionary, very idyllic and idealic. And together these energies can work towards, yes, let's go for the fantasy right now. Absolutely, 100%. Ultimately, I want to leave you kind of with the phrase of a spiritual fire when you think about Mars moving through Pisces. And, am I getting righteous here? Am I getting out of check? Or am I pursuing something that is in alignment with my goals and values, my spiritual goals and values, and the spiritual goals and values of the people around me? Regardless of dogma, right? Regardless of religion, are, where are we at spiritually with each other? That thing. Pisces is way, way more concerned with spirituality than it is with religion. Doesn't really care about religion. Not too concerned. All right. I think that tells us what we need to know about that. Let us move on to the holy days of April 14th. Okay, holy days for April 14th. Okay. Sorry. I don't know why I did that. First, we have the sun entering Aries in sidereal astrology. Don't forget, kids. We folks in the West, tend to practice astrology that is, give or take, about 2,000 years behind what is actually physically happening in the sky. Tropical astrology or Western astrology is based on where the planets were at the time of the basically the Greco-Roman era, like collectively, where planets were, or excuse me, where fixed stars were in respect to various constellations, and where the vernal or spring equinox was in conjunction with those constellations and fixed stars, or respect to them. Everything in the universe wiggles, and so the sky has moved. Things are different now. Shit's changed, man. Which is one of the really amazing things, tangent, one of the really amazing things about some of the megalithic sites around the world. One, we can tell when a megalithic site was built by looking at what stars it might have lined up with at the time that it was built. Isn't that crazy? Not all megalithic sites have stones that align with fixed stars. A lot of megalithic sites just align with solar moments, so where the sun is going to be on the horizon at any particular time. Vernal equinoxes, winter solstice, summer solstice, etc. But some megalithic sites do mark other things, and fixed stars are amongst them. And there are some megalithic sites that were maintained over such a vast period of time that you can see that they moved the stones with the movement of the stars, which is pretty intense because the stars move, the fixed stars, quote unquote, move about 1 degree every 72 years. Tangent, 72, pretty magical number. If you know, you know. Uh, so kind of an interesting thing that our ancient peoples also understood, that 72 was a big deal because after 72 years, we were going to have to move the rock 1 degree around the circle that the megalithic site was built on. That's the end of that tangent, honestly. But anyways, coming back to the sun entering Aries, this is happening in the sky now. According to our charts, the sun entered Aries on March 21st. But if we were to actually look at where the sun is today, right now, in relation to the constellations in the sky, it has just entered the sign of Aries. If you want to learn more about this, because it's a lot of information and it's confusing, and astronomy and astrology kind of doesn't do a good job at talking about this, and I don't really know why. Um, Look up the Wikipedia page, the zodiacal precession. That's PREC, precession, not procession, because it moves backwards just to keep it spicy. And you can learn more about this. And it's a really interesting symbol key because as we look backwards through time, we will see that whatever sign was on the vernal equinox or the spring equinox is a symbol that becomes a really big deal in the religions of the day and the cultures of the day. For example, 2,000 years ago, when Jesus was kind of like, coming into his whole big deal thing, Pisces was the sign or the constellation that was the first where the sun was on the vernal equinox or spring equinox. And of course, the fishes are kind of a big symbol in Catholicism and Christianity. So, and on and on and on. So, today, well, April 14th, the sun enters Aries in sidereal astrology. Also on this day. From April 14th to 25th, approximately, from our Norse friends and ancestors, we have Sommersblot. This is the bloodletting of summer or summer's finding or the beginning of the solar half of the year. I have a big old piece about Sommersblot on my website. Just head to the Ostara link and scroll down. You'll find that piece of writing. Sommersblot basically was the opening of the solar half of the year for a lot of Norse folk. They basically split the year in half, like a lot of Celtic people did as well. They didn't mess with multiple holidays. There was the dark half of the year and the light half of the year, and that was that. And how this was marked for these cultures was that they would, wait until the sun began to spill down into the valley. And that was officially the day that year began, or that half of the year began. And there's more information about it there. Go check out that writing. All right. Also on April 14th to 24th, from our Balinese friends and ancestors, we have Golangang, and this is New Year's. Again, we have lots and lots of New Year's happening at this time of year with the vernal equinox or the sun entering Aries, etc., etc. And this is also a feast of the dead. So here we have another ancestor worship moment. We've had a few last week and a few the week before as well. So again and again. From our Chinese, Korean, and Japanese friends and ancestors, we have the Shangxi Festival. This festival was or is to ward off evil spirits and natural disasters. The Shangxi Festival is also a day considered to be the possible birthday of a really incredible figure called the Yellow Emperor, who was known for their amazing healing skills and information, like their wisdom and knowledge around healing was unparalleled, but that's not all that they did. Really, really interesting character. Go check them out. Also, side note, yellow, wildly important to the sign of Aries, like a really key color in the sign of Aries. From our Jain friends and ancestors, we have Mahavir Jayanti. This is a one of a kind day dedicated to the conception of Lord Mahavir, a Jain saint who is known amongst the most famous saints to have ever lived on earth. And from our Catholic friends and ancestors, we have Maundy Thursday. This is, again, part of Holy Week leading up to the end of Lent. And this is the day of the washing of the feet, which, of course, I always think is really interesting because feet connected to Pisces. We also have the Bengalis' New Year on this day. All right, let's move on to April 15th. April 15th is a Friday. We have our waxing moon still hanging out in Libra, pre-funking the full moon. So yes, we will have a beautiful Libra full moon on Saturday. Isn't that cute? Full moon for the weekend. Spring is springing. It's kind of cute. It's kind of cute. As I said, during this waxing moon in Libra, this is getting frisky with yourself, but getting frisky with other people, or just hanging out with folks that you love and partying and sharing love in whatever ways are safe and healthy for you, given that we have a COVID spike going on, and or supporting other people, knocking sacred boots if you need to babysit or, dog sit or whatever it is, so somebody can go out and have a nice time. Also a sacred act right now. Super cute. Maybe they'll return the favor later, right? No astrology of note for this day. So we're going to get right into the holy days of April 15th. And we have a few to start. April 15th to May 12th, we have the Celtic tree month of willow. Willow is such a cool plant. Also an incredible drag queen. The willow moon was known to the Celts as Salier. The willow grows best where there's lots of rain, and in the Northern Hemisphere, there is no shortage of rain at this time of year. This is a tree associated with healing and growth. Of course, definitely things that we are supporting and working with at this time of year, and especially with all this Pisces energy this week. A willow planted near your home will help ward away danger, particularly the type that stems from natural disasters such as flooding or storms. They offer protection and are often found planted near cemeteries. So again, here's some death work bleeding through the edges, right? This tree supports work on rituals involving healing, the growth of knowledge, nurturing, and women's mysteries. Also happening or starting on this day from April 15th to April 23rd, we have from our Jewish friends and ancestors, Passover. This is a major Jewish holiday that celebrates the exodus of the Jews from slavery in Egypt. The Passover ritual is widely thought to have origins in an apotropaic rite, and that is a rite or a spell or a ritual enacted for protection. And totally unrelated to the Exodus, to ensure the protection of a family home, a rite conducted wholly within a clan. So it would have just been an individual group of people that would have done this for themselves and each other. Hyssop was employed to daub the blood of a slaughtered lamb on the lintels and doorposts to ensure that demonic forces could not enter the home. A further hypothesis maintains that the apotropaic rite was arguably amalgamated with the Canaanite agricultural festival of spring, which was a ceremony of unleavened bread connected with the barley harvest. And we do know that we've already talked about in the last couple of weeks that there's been barley and cereal. I mean, ceres specifically is connected to cereal grains. Lots of barley and cereal stuff emphasized at this time of year. As the Exodus motif grew, the original function and symbolism of these double origins was lost. Several motifs replicate the features associated with the Mesopotamian Akitu festival, traces of which, parts of it, are still celebrated today in Iraq. Yeah, so Passover, interesting stuff. Lots of cool things going on there, but lots of springtime rituals, sacrifices or other rituals for protection, and then sacrifices and or other rituals for to ensure fertility and virility of plants. From our pagan friends and ancestors and the Wheel of the Year calendars from around the internet, April 15th through 17th, we have the Feast of the Seas. And so here again, we have an emphasis of sort of the opening up of the waterways and water channels and bodies of water that are going to facilitate travel and trade. Also on this day from our Catholic friends and ancestors, we have Good Friday, aka the crucifixion of Christ. Kind of a big deal in the Lent and Easter ceremony. So the death, and then we will have the resurrection of Christ here in just a moment. Here at Spring, Jesus joins a really auspicious collection of deities that die and are resurrected. Some of them are not uh, resurrected here at Spring, but most of them are. We have Tammuz and Damuzi, Balder. Osiris is killed and resurrected in Fall. But yeah, I mean, there's a collection here of deities that go through this process. Attis, we just got done with the Kybel ceremony dedicated to her and Attis. So yeah, the crucifixion of Christ, Good Friday. Also here on April 15th, we have the Feast of Tellus Mater from our pagan friends and ancestors / our Roman friends and ancestors. Tellus Mater, or Terra Mater, is Mother Earth. She is a goddess of the earth, although Tellus and Terra are hardly distinguishable during the imperial era of Rome. Tellus was the name of the original earth goddess. And, you know, again, we have this holiday earlier in the week dedicated to Ceres, kind of almost the same thing. The attributes of Tellus were the cornucopia, or bunches of flowers or fruit. She was typically depicted reclining or rising waist high from a hole in the ground, which I love. That depicted reclining really makes me think about the Empress card in tarot, but also that idea of like rising waist high from the ground is literally like, I am the verdant earth growing up out of myself. Check it out. Here I am. Let's go. Her male counterpart was a sky god like Uranus or a form of Jupiter, and her Greek counterpart is Gaia. And so, yeah, earth goddess all the way. Also on this day, from our pagan friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Bast. This is not the only one. And it's kind of an acknowledgement of a lot of the things that Bast does. She was depicted as a great mother at one point or another. She's oversees fertility, protection, childbirth and childbearing, like maternal stuff. Bast did a lot of different things. We've talked about her previously on the podcast. She has another holy day in the year, which we will get into her stuff a little more deeply on that day. And last but not least of the holy days for April 15th, we have from our Roman friends and ancestors Fortadicia or Fortadicia. This is a festival of fertility held 2 days after the Ides of April, aka after the full moon, but I've moved it because of calendars. And that pertained to farming and animal husbandry. It involved a sacrifice, which kind of is graphic, and I'm not going to get into the details of it, but a sacrifice to Tellus, who we just talked about. And it is also always held in proximity to the festival of Ceres, or the Cerealia. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of our week. Let's get into the wrap up. All right. So, did anybody think about my question from last week, which was, what do you think about all of this death symbolism here at the beginning of spring? Now, there's a lot of ways that we can look at this, and I don't think that one answer is correct for all circumstances. I think that we have a whole bunch of stuff going on, but all of that stuff kind of does fall under a few big umbrellas. And those umbrellas are this, I think, anyways. Ultimately the ancestors. Ultimately, it's rooting back in literally our ancestors. If we think about how many different cultures buried their dead for how long, right? And then we think about pressing seeds down into the dark soil. We think about the underworld journey that we went through in winter, and now we come into spring, and not only do we come out of our caves, we come out of our hibernation, right? The hermits are coming down from the mountain to kind of like check in on what's going on. But when we're sort of coming back to life, right? Our vitality and virality are coming back. But the earth is literally growing back up from underground. And so for me, that symbolism all really weaves together into this incredible image of seeing the new life rooted in everything that came before it, because it's all there in the black soil, right? It's all there in that rich, wet black soil that is in that is Tellus Mater, that is Gaia, that is Mokosh, that is, so many. Panchamama, like there's so many different goddesses that are the living earth itself. And so for me, that's how all of that stuff works together. Plus, and also, we are looking to our guides and our ancestors for help as we move into the new energetic cycle. We move into the new solar year. It's like, oh, well, we've been here before, but we've never been here before. So how do we do it this time? What do I need to know? What's going to go wrong? What's going to go right? Right. So we're asking for that guidance. We're asking for help from people who did it many, many times before us. And also, I think that there is an asking for protection and an asking for a blessing from our ancestors and from those spirits that came before us and those spirits in the black earth, in the rich black soil. I think we're also asking them, like, hey, like, protect my crops, please. And hey, can you help? Can you be as abundant as possible? Here's a sacrifice. Here's some grain from last year. Here's a quarter, like, can you please help me out? Right. So I think it's all of those things. I think it's really hard for us in the modern era to imagine what it was like for people in ancient days, because their gods and goddesses and their ancestors and the energies of a place were so much closer to them. They were so much realer for them. And, we live in an extremely scientific, sterilized era. And so, all of that being said, I wonder, just how subversive is it to have an imagination? How subversive is it to insist that your dreams could become reality? How subversive is it to insist that you could draw a pentagram in air and push back negativity? How subversive, right? It goes beyond just being ridiculous, because we live in an era that is so certain of its scientific self. It's so grounded and based in this very pragmatic physical world thing, right? How dare you have a soul? How dare you have gods and goddesses? It's quite audacious, isn't it? Just that stuff this week, guys. Just that stuff. Our lunar phases this week move from Cancer to Libra, so we are still in our cardinal signs, opening up the spring energy of the year. Oop, those are snacks for later. Don't worry about it. Um, I'm pulling out the astrology for the week. Let me give you the full rundown of the astrology for this week, and not just the stuff that we talked about. Um, April 8th, we have Jupiter in Pisces sextile the North Node in Taurus at 23 degrees. Also on April 8th, we have Mercury in Aries sextile Mars in Aquarius at 25 degrees. On April 10th, we have Mercury moving into Taurus. We also have we should say it this way. We have Mercury in Aries square Pluto in Capricorn at 28 degrees. And then later that day, we have Mercury moving into Taurus. On the 11th, we have Saturn in Aquarius square the nodes in Taurus and Scorpio at 22 degrees. On the 12th, we have Jupiter in Pisces conjunct Neptune in Pisces at 23 degrees. And also on that day, we have the Sun in Aries sextile Saturn in Aquarius at 23 degrees. And last but not least, on April 14th, we have Mars entering Pisces. Next week, we have a full moon in Libra, and we have the Sun entering Taurus, and we have a few other things going on. If you haven't checked out the Ostara stuff, check it out. If you have, cool, thanks. What else? The Beltane class will be coming up shortly. I will be announcing it soon. Tarot Circle will be happening eventually for patrons, so sign up for that if you want to attend. You can also sign up for my irregular newsletter, which is free through my website, to keep up to date on what the fuck is going on with me and all the stuff I offer. And last but not least, if you are wanting to work with this stuff in your own life and find out where these transits are in your life, book a reading with me. Book an astrology reading, book a tarot reading, and we can talk about it. So many thank yous to my patrons. So many thank yous to my patrons who make this all possible. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you. You can leave a review on your podcast service wherever you listen to this, and if you're feeling especially heathenistic, you can give it a thumbs up. That's it, my heathens. I want you to cry big, and then I want you to dream bigger. Okay? Okay. I love you. Blessed be.